All right, welcome everyone to this Sparked HL7 AU eRequesting Technical Design Group meeting for Thursday, the 7th of November 2024. Bit of business to go over first, and then I'm going to hand over to Michael to go through the ballot for comment issues. So here's what we're looking at today. We're just going to handle the meetings from previous minutes and quickly review the upcoming events. Then Michael's going to talk to us about the resolution of the block vote, last block vote, the next ballot for comment resolution, and then block vote 5, and then we'll quickly come back and just remind people what's happening over the next 2 months. So to get started, we're just going to quickly look at the minutes for the 24th. So that's these ones here. So that covers all the items that were covered in that meeting around ballot for comments 4. Would anyone like to motion to approve those minutes?
I'll motion to approve.
You guys.
Thanks, Michael. Hey, Angus. And do we have a second?
I'll second, Christy.
Thanks, Christy. Okay. I'm a little bit behind here. I need to bring up the poll. All right, so we're going to launch a poll for approving those minutes. You should see that on your screen now. Just need to click affirmative, negative, or abstain. Awesome, and we'll close that one off in 3, 2, 1. And the meeting minutes have been approved. 9 affirmative and 8 abstained of 17 voted. Now there's 2 action items listed for today. Does anyone have an update on either of those?
No, I don't think there's any updates on those. They're just there as just so we don't forget about them eventually when we finish off ballot for comment. They just haven't been closed, so they're just sitting there in limbo.
No worries. All right, so let's have a quick look at the upcoming events. We've got 2 to talk about. You probably know about them already. The next in-person event is the TDG and CDG co-design workshops coming up on November 20th and 21st in Melbourne. I believe the CDG is currently sold out, but there are spaces for the TDG day on the 21st. So this is the last opportunity really that we'll have for some time to get together in one place to talk about TDG, and it will be very likely the last opportunity to determine what goes into scope for the remainder of release 1 of the AU eRequesting IG. So we're going to try and thrash that out on that day and work out exactly what we can get in and what we can't. So if you're really interested in what's going to be in that, then you should try and get along to that. Noting that there is no virtual option for that event. So you do need to be in the room for that. Now, if you're more interested in actually working with the standards and trying to implement them and see how that all rolls, then you probably want to come to the Fire Connect-a-thon, which is held on the 12th and 13th of December. Now, unfortunately, that one is sold out, but you can go on the wait list. So contact events at hl7.com.au to get on there. All right, Michael, I think I might hand over to you now.
Yep, I might just share my screen. Sorry, Ruben, did you?
Yeah, I had a question. Actually, I'm not sure if this was on the previous slide, but in relation to that CDG, TDG event in November, has a venue for it been decided? Because I tried looking this up yesterday or the day before. And
yes.
it wasn't on the Spark website, although that may have changed since then.
No, it is. We definitely have a venue. We're not scrambling last minute for a venue.
That's always good.
Let me just find, we've got an agenda page. Let me just find a link for that. And I'll put it in the chat. I can confirm. It's not on that page, is it? It's not actually
No,
on that.
it says
Yeah,
location
right.
Melbourne.
Yep. So I do have a link here. It is at the Melbourne Marriott Hotel. I'm just going to put a link into the chat to our agenda page. So I might share my window. Okay. Oh, Chris, I think you need to. Oh, yeah, you've got it there. So yeah, so it is. Yeah, it's the Marriott Hotel in Melbourne on Lonsdale Street. For anyone who can't attend, certainly have a look at this agenda page. We've got some ballot issues we're going to talk about there. If you have any specific items you want to talk about in scope and planning for R1, just reach out to a co-chair. We're happy to represent any thoughts or comments you might have if you can't make it on the day. We'll also bring back to the next TDG after this event the outcomes of that, so there'll be opportunity to discuss any of the outcomes of this day as well. So if you can't make it, just reach out to a co-chair, and yeah, we can talk to you about that.
Thank you.
Hey, Michael, it's Kathleen here. Just in relation to the December dates, I didn't register for those because obviously I have to choose which ones I'm going to. I can't go to everything just from a financial perspective for our association that I'm with. But I've now been accepted on the AU Patient Summary Project team, and it's got a face-to-face the day before, which I've been approved to go to, but it seems like a bit of a waste to go down for one day because I can't get into the other 2 days, which I didn't know about the one day until now. So is there any way of getting into the other 2 days? Because it just seems financially, a lot of money to fly down
I mean,
for
like I
one
said, they're sold out, but there is a capacity limit on the venue. But that email address, events@hl7.com.au, you can send an email to there saying, look, I'd like to go on the wait list. Just explain you're a member of the TDG and that you're attending that patient summary event as well.
This is actually for the AU Patient Summary Project team now. So I've only just been notified that, like by the time the notification came out, the other 2 days were sold out.
Yeah, they do sell out very quickly. The main work, I believe, I mean, this is all on the AU core side, but it's predominantly going to be around testing of AU core. And if anyone's got any patient summary stuff to bring along, but it'll be pretty hands-on AU core testing and that track.
Okay.
So I don't think you'll miss much from a patient summary point of view not being there for that, because it is going to be technical people connecting, and there is no patient summary spec yet for them to test against.
Perfect.
But definitely reach out because you might get a cancellation ticket or something like that. So
it's just that I have to get accommodation and flights and stuff, so I can't really, but you need to know before you book. That's all.
Yep. But yeah, definitely send an email and so you can go on the wait list.
Okay.
Don't worry, Kathleen, you're not alone. I'm not going to the Connect-a-thon for the same reason. So it's a challenge to get to all the events. We know that. All right, Michael, shall I hand over to you for the block votes?
Yep. I'll try and share my screen. Right. Hopefully you can see that there now. Yep. You can? Great. I was wondering if Heath is actually here, because I was going to talk some of this to Heath. It doesn't look like he's been able to attend. I think I can still talk to it. He has spoken to me about it. But we had an electronic vote that went out after the last TDG meeting. So that was block vote 4 about substantive changes to the eRequesting capability statements. The result of that was affirmative. We have 12 votes, but there was an item referred to Telecom about include search parameters. So I'll just jump over to that e-vote. So this was the electronic vote for block vote 4. This was about adding search and read to capability statements for the different actors. Down the bottom here, Heath has added comments to one of these items, wanting it to be referred to telecom. So what happens in that process? So when someone is doing the vote and they choose refer to telecom, the process then is we move it, take that item out of the block vote. So it's no longer part of the block vote and will be voted on separately. And then after I've done that, Heath has then changed his vote to affirmative. So he's happy, he was happy with the outcome of the other items. It was just that one that wanted to be talked to. So for any future votes, if anyone's in a similar situation, they think there's one there that they want to talk about, you can just request in the comments here by referring to telecom, and then we'll talk about it in a meeting.
Sorry, Michael. Just drew attention to two things. First of all, do you think you were sharing the block vote page?
Am
Because
I
we can only
not?
see the other one. Yep.
Yes.
And
Yep.
secondly, Heath has just entered the chat.
Excellent. Let me fix my sharing. I'll just stop sharing. I'll reshare. Screen one. There we go. Hopefully you can see that now. Oh, press the share button. Now you should be able to share. See it? Okay. So yes, this was a block vote 4 I was talking about. Like I noted, Heath added a comment, said, I'd like to discuss this. He ticked to refer to telecom, and we'll discuss it here. So we'll bring up that item now. So the item that was referred to telecom was add include search parameters to AU eRequesting service request profiles. So this was to reduce the number of requests that a client system has to make when retrieving the details of diagnostic service requests. The include search parameter should be added to must support reference elements. And that should apply to service request, imaging request, pathology request, with the following include mandatory search parameters, patient request and encounter. So the resolution for that was actually a persuasive with modification. So it was to justify that again, to reduce the number of requests the client system should make when retrieving the details of a diagnostic service request. Include search parameters should be added where available for must support. So what that does, it means you can add include on the patient request or encounter insurance, and it'll come back with the search with the result, rather than you having to make separate queries to go and get each of the referenced resources. So the resolution said here that the requesting placer, filler, patient, access, and server capability statements will be updated to add these include search parameters on service request. And it was also noted down the bottom here that there is currently no search parameter on insurance. So we would need add a new search parameter to allow the include on insurance. So that would add a custom search parameter to eRequesting. Heath, do you want to talk through your comments on that?
Yeah, so basically reading this in review, if we read the description part of it, the original description, it had basically the addition of the underscore include mandatory search parameters shall. So, but when I read the resolution, it wasn't clear on what our conformance requirement was. It didn't actually say anything in the resolution, whether we were saying that these new underscore includes were going to be a shall requirement or not. Personally, if they are shall, I think that is too extreme. And a should might be sufficient. Second part is insurance needing to have a custom search parameter be added to it. I currently don't see a driving use case for it in my view at this point in time. When we provide coverage to say that this is a self-pay or a Medicare pay or some maybe a concession, that is usually captured as part of an individual request, and hence it's unlikely to be an external resource. In other words, it will probably be a contained resource somewhere. So I'm not sure that we have enough of a use case yet to go to the effort of actually creating a new custom search parameter for insurance, when I personally think it's likely to be contained, at least in the first iteration of our implementations. So that's pretty much what I wanted to discuss. I think we did actually cover this briefly at the last meeting, and we got a bit hung up on how do we even say the conformance requirement for underscore include. And there is actually something in the capability statement that allows us to state that there is a conformance statement extension that we use, and Dushi has provided basically what that looks like. So effectively, I think that's where we stopped the last meeting, because we didn't know how we could even state the fact that these are shalls. But now that we know that there is a capability, I think we should be able to have the discussion on whether these are shalls or shoulds or whatever. And then I think a secondary conversation about whether we want to go to the effort at this point of insurance. Personally, I'm not in favor of insurance. I personally think that should be removed from this resolution. But the others should rather than shall.
I think, I think the original resolution description was agnostic on should or shall, because it wasn't clear about whether you could actually even specify it. But like you said, Dushi has now clarified that there is an extension that we do use in capability statements to add the conformance requirement for a shall. But I'll just show everyone what that looks like in the capability statements. Is if we have, let's look at the server capability statement. Here we have for each of the resource types, there's over here on the right, whether we have include or rev include. I might just show you an AE core so you get a better idea of something that's already got some capability statements. Responder. Okay. You'll see here for medication request, for example, has an include of medication request medication. Now, that doesn't say anywhere here in this capability statement that it's a should or shall or what the conformance expectation is on that, but that's a rendering issue. It does actually can have it underneath in the detailed capability statements, just doesn't necessarily render. But we can absolutely specify whether it is a shall or should.
So if you click on the medication request link on the left, you can actually see in narrative, which is handwritten by Dushi at the moment, we actually have the statement to say this is a shall.
Yeah, but it is in machine readable
to interrupt,
underneath.
Michael. Andy's trying to let us know there are people in the lobby waiting to get admitted to the meeting.
I was just about to say that.
Thanks. Chris, can you let him in?
Oh, I can't see anyone in the waiting room. Oh, hang on. No, I'm getting some. Sorry, I apologize. I've got it's missing from one of my lists.
Yeah, so we put the narrative in there, but it is actually in there in machine readable. So it's just rendering issues that won't show it, but that will probably get resolved at some point. Yeah, what we're talking about here is then clarifying our resolution by specifying whether it is shall or should on the include here. I think, Heath, you suggested that we could do a shall on the server, but a should on the client. Is that, or do you think that the server should only be a should as well?
I think it's only a should.
Okay. I mean, the problem with the should is that a client can't build with expectation that the server will support it. So you would have to have varying client implementations depending on which server supports it or not.
Yeah, but taking counter as an example, if a server only supports contained encounters, then why would it implement? Why is it mandated for it to support a underscore include? So basically the same, like if you could just go back to that medication one there, and we read what we've done with the medication request there. So, I mean, we could get even more complex around this, but there, if you read the bottom part of that first paragraph, it says, if an external reference to a medication is used, the responder shall support the underscore include. So that's basically talking about the difference between a medication request having a contained medication versus an external medication. So if we wanted to get to it, that along those lines, then we can probably have this conditional requirement.
How is that implemented? I don't know. Dushi, are you on the line about
you
how
can't do the conditional.
No.
Basically, in the actual computable part, it's a should, but we've got this basically implementation guidance here to say, well, you shall. So it can't be stated in a computable form that we are aware of at this time. Well, that I'm aware of. Sorry, Dushi.
Yeah. No, that's fine. Yeah, I agree with that.
Does anyone else have any comments on Heath's thoughts there about changing this to a should and removing insurance? No. Do you want to make a motion for that? Okay.
Yeah, my motion is to change this resolution to remove insurance, and that the conformance or the capability requirement level is should for each of the patient, requester, and encounter resources.
Does that have to come with a caveat that insurance therefore must be contained?
No, we're just saying that we don't know yet.
If it's not contained and you don't make this a shall, then there's no way of getting insurance. If we say, oh, it doesn't have to be contained, then how do I get the insurance on a server that didn't implement the extra search parameter?
I think that's another request. Personally, I don't think we should be including it as part of this. If anything, it's another change request. I mean, if we look at the original requirement, we're not asking for insurance in the original request. I think it's a new change. I think there's too much trying to include other things that are unrelated to the original ballot requests.
The reason it was, I mean, this was mine, and the reason it wasn't there is because there wasn't the search parameter. Yeah, it's, I mean, it's whether, if it's a should and we have it there, means it gives us the ability to do it, or we just don't do it, and then there's no obligation on anyone to do it until we decide later that we need it. So
until we've got implementation experience with this. I mean, if there's someone on the call that has an implementation already that does coverage as an external resource, please stand up. But as I said, I personally think that that is a new request. It's not a part of this ballot response.
And you don't want to do what you just pointed out in core, where you had extra rules that said if it's contained, it's a should. If it's not contained, it's a shall.
I'm more interested in what's computable. So what is going to end up in the capability statement? There's no way that we can really enforce that. That is guidance, but personally, I mean, if you want to, I can understand things like patient and requester potentially being shalls. I mean, if people want to go down that route, I'm open to a change in my proposal. But again, I just feel like we're starting to put in really, really strict capabilities on us on a server.
May I just ask why insurance, why you'd like insurance to be included? I think just understanding in a sentence why they feel that would be needed.
So the user interfaces I've seen on requesting systems, they usually have a checkbox as part of the screen. So it's actually stored as part of the data associated with that particular request. Next time you create a request, you have to check that checkbox again. So there's, based on the rules around, or the principles around contained resources, when you have no alternative, when you are not able to identify a resource independent of the resource that is referencing it, then that's when you use a contained resource. If you can, if that resource or that insurance has an existence outside of that request, then that's when you would do an external reference. So that's the principle that I'm sort of alluding to at the moment. Existing system, we're not going back to an existing insurance resource at all. That's independent of this request. The insurance is always stated as part of the request currently, as far in the implementations I've seen. Does that make sense?
So to summarize that, patient requester and encounter are external and thus should have or could have include search parameters, but insurance, being part of the request, should be contained, but that requires a separate change request. Is that the high-level summary?
And your request is to take service request insurance out of this, leave it as should for the other three.
Correct.
With a sort of caveat that down the road, because of this, we probably should make insurance enforce that it is contained, but that's a different thing. That's a later task.
Well, I don't know if you want to make that call, but that's another discussion, I think, independent of this.
Well, if that discussion says, oh, no, insurance absolutely can not be contained, or, you know, it's allowed to not be contained, then we're back here saying it's a should, isn't it? Because otherwise that system that doesn't contain it has no way of getting it.
Let's have that conversation when it becomes a real requirement.
Sorry to be pedantic. I just want to be clear. So when you're talking about insurance, you're talking about health insurance and Medicare?
No, we're talking about the radio buttons on your screen that says this is private, concession, or Medicare. So it doesn't actually say what is your Medicare number or anything like that. It's just an indicator to the pathology lab that who they should be sending the bill to.
Yeah, so it is what I thought it was, whether it's private, then it's private health insurance, Medicare, or out of pocket.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, and if I think about it, I think that down the track might be important data to collect. The reason being that it could influence rebate for patients down the track.
I don't think we're debating whether it's, we all agree it's important. It's about how we pass. This change here implies a later change is the bit I'm stuck up on, and I'm fine. Make this change here, and we kind of have to remember in the back of our head that means must be contained going forward.
Right, it's kind of just kicking the issue down the road. But
yeah, that's kind of what that's the bit that concerns me.
That's fine.
Well, again, I don't see the need at the moment to be pointing to an external insurance coverage resource because of the fact that it's always associated with that. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to suit every implementation, just the ones that I've seen so far. So, do we want to lock it down to not being contained? But it then when someone comes along and says, oh, well, I've got this external insurance, how do I retrieve it? Well, then we can have that conversation, but let's not try and solve
And then,
problems
I
that we
mean, you
currently
can
don't
always
have.
get it. It's just a second query, right? So
Yeah.
it's not like you can't get it. It's just you can't do it and include in one query. So
That's a good
we're not,
point. And I was probably I was probably not appreciating.
okay. Well, Heath, do you want to restate? Yeah. Motion.
Basically, my amendment to this is, I don't know, maybe is it easier for me to just paste what I think?
Is it not just remove the line that says service request insurance?
And the second and the last paragraph, but also
Yes.
the main thing here is that the conformance level of this is a should.
Well, actually,
for
I
the
can
three.
probably edit this here if we want. To get it right on the screen. Raise disposition.
It's already
Yeah.
should, isn't it?
So
No, that's not stated.
yeah, so the top is fine. Include parameters we added where available for must support reference. eRequesting access eRequesting server capabilities we update with these include search parameters on ServiceRequest. So I think we'll just drop the insurance and we'll drop that last paragraph, and we want to say something about the should. These, I should put it here. Should. Oh, do it capitals. Does that satisfy that?
Now, having said that, I don't know whether I complicate this anymore. In our conversation, Michael, we did talk about whether patient access even needed this. Whether we should be even putting the onus of should on them at all. I mean, certainly from a filler perspective, and I'm not.
I have a fundamental issue with these requirements being on client actors at all, because the client should be able to build its queries however it likes, depending on its need, and there shouldn't be a should obligation on them at all. But I think that's a much bigger issue and not related to this. I don't want to probably complicate it here. That if we were talking here, this is a shall on a server and a should on a client, then maybe we need to have that conversation. But if we're just saying this is a should, we'll follow the pattern we've got where, I mean, it's the same thing. If the patient's pulling back if the patient access actor's pulling back a service request, well, it probably wants the related information as well and would use the include. So.
And it'd be technically correct. An eRequesting poster doesn't even do a search, so it should be removed from the list as well.
But it can do a search.
No, it doesn't.
It's on ID.
No.
I thought we added that in one of the other ones.
Oh, if that's the case, but I haven't seen a search. Currently, there's no search in there. So if it's been added as part of the ballot,
I think we've added it in through. I think we've added ID on all of them because it's equivalent to a read. So.
I struggle with the server. This is a should for the server. It just means that everyone else now can't rely on it, can they? So
that's it. You have to potentially build the lowest common denominator, which is they might not have it.
Exactly. Otherwise, you're just building to that implementation that did, and it doesn't work anywhere else, or potentially doesn't. I feel like it should be should for the server and shall for the others. Sorry, shall for the server, should for the other. Shall for the server and the place in the filler should use the includes.
But then you get complicated with the encounter because that's potentially going to be contained in some servers and not in others. I understand patient requesting, so if you want, I'm more than happy to amend that so that patient and requester is a shall.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So if you make it a shall, you're insisting that it isn't contained.
That's one way of stating it. Not, but that's not what we've said elsewhere, I don't think, unless we haven't actually said it elsewhere.
I mean, we don't need to get this perfect now. We need to get something that we can use, right? And that we can test with and use it connectathons and the like so that we can make sure it's fit for purpose. So we need to make sure we've got something that's going to work for us. But we can change these later with implementation experience to say that. So we need a good starting point, but it doesn't have to be the end.
I've just suggested something in the chat. We make patient and requester as shall. Does that, and should is encounter.
Should encounter, yeah, for the server.
Does that reduce your concern, Angus?
It does.
But then we've got to separate this into two groups as well because of the server versus clients. So let me try that again.
I feel like what you did in core is kind of like the right answer, isn't it? It's like it's conditional on whether it's contained or not. Like if it's
yeah,
still convoluted, isn't it?
I mean, we can go down that track if you really want to, but as Michael said, I think we can spend all our time on this particular item, wordsmithing it, or
I think this is a good like patient requester. We know the other ones are should, right? That we can, when we make some of those decisions later, we can change it from a should to a shall if we decide it's not going to be contained and the like. So
I agree. I think we just have to do the minimal here. As a comment was made earlier in the week at a different meeting, I think we're getting too bogged down in the interactions at such an early point. Like we need to be focusing on the profile and what's in the profiles, and then through use we can start locking down the interaction stuff. It's we don't really know how anyone's going to do this, so we're second guessing. It's cart before the horse. We're trying to
absolutely
lock down how people will interact with the data model without even having finished the data model.
all right.
Do you want to just copy and paste what I put in
I
this?
just did, and it just threw all my formatting out. But there we go. I think so we've got here the AU requesting placer, filler, and patient will be updated. Add these include separate parameters on service request as a should. The AU requesting server capability statement will be updated to add these include such parameters as a shall. Let me say and as a should, as should.
Yeah,
okay.
Happy with that.
Does that? Are we happy with this now? Oh, sorry, it just goes off the bottom. With those, the top bit didn't change, so it's only these bits that's changed. Okay.
All right, I so move.
Now second.
Okay, so we're going to vote for that motion. All right, I'm going to pop that up on your screen right now. You should see a poll. If for some reason you don't understand what you're voting on, stick up your hand and we will take questions, but otherwise you can vote affirmative, negative, or abstain. All right, and we'll close that one off in 3, 2, 1. All right, and that one has been approved. 18 votes for and 10 abstained.
Okay, great. These capability statement ones are always quite difficult. And I think, yeah, like Angus has said there, we're going to have to work out moving forward about how far we go with these interactions in R1. And that might be some of the discussions we have around scoping for R1 about how complete we are on the interactions, given that it's going to evolve. I'll jump back to presentation. Okay, so we've just done that referred to telecom. So now getting back into, well, we've just done some more ballot comment resolution, but this is an update on where we're at. So for triage, the co-chairs triage, we've done 98% of them. We've got one issue left that we're going to talk about today or early next week. So we've nearly triaged all of them. The reconciliation there through the TDG, we've done 46 of those 55 issues. Well, that's now 47 because we just did one then as well. So we're getting there today. Hopefully with what we get through today and then the day in Melbourne, we'll make that 100%, if not very close to 100%. And then the applied, we've got the IG authors going through, following us to make some changes. They've only made 2 changes to date, but there's a number that are in the works being reviewed, and they'll come through as we over the coming weeks to get those all into the IG, those changes applied. So we've made great progress. We're getting there, and hopefully by the end of the next meeting, we'll be pretty much there on real reconciliation. So the items for today's agenda, these are the ones we're bringing through today. So I might, rather than just talk about them here, we'll just jump straight into the next one, which is this first one is a follow-on from discussion we had at a previous meeting where we started talking about it at the end, but didn't come to a position. We've actually changed the resolution. The co-chairs have talked about this since that meeting and changed the resolution on this. So I might just jump straight into that one. Where we go? Not too many open now. I'll just click the link. Sorry. This one, missing data and all that. So this one, another one that was raised by Heath. So during the Brisbane Connect-a-thon, we had a breakout around ServiceRequest missing data. It was agreed to not allow missing data extensions on any of the mandatory ServiceRequest elements. We recommended a missing data guidance section that includes, at least for ServiceRequest mandatory elements and other resources with the same approach, that no missing data extension or codes are allowed. Note that obligations are not sufficient to include this, and Zillow conversations on this topic indicated that explicitly prohibit the missing data extension would be the only computable means. So I'll just show you what we've got in the IG at the moment around this. So this is under performance and must support. Okay, so it's under mandatory elements. We say that mandatory elements with a minimal cardinality greater than 0. When an element is mandatory, the data is expected to always be present, but rarely it may not. And this circumstance, see the guidance in AU core on missing data. So there is a section in AU core that talks about using missing data extension, the data absent reason extension, and the like, about how you can specify something that's not that is missing. So the idea here was that because we're creating a service request, that request, everything would be mandatory, and providing missing data would make it hard for the filler to process. All right, if something was missing, what does the filler do with it? It's missing. What do I do? I don't know what's supposed to be in there. So we had a bit of discussion back and forth about that in the co-chairs, and we've tried to change the resolution on this now, because it was persuasive before. We were saying it was persuasive when we would say that. But I think it became clear that we haven't done enough of the IG development to make that call yet. We haven't done all the related resources. We haven't worked through all the details on the moment. So the idea here was we're saying there's not persuasive modification. So that's mean it's not a persuasive argument at this point in time, but we're still going to make a change to the IG. And what we have here is that it's too early to provide specific guidance on missing data extension in AU requesting. The full scope of profiles for R1 are yet to be determined, and no missing data use cases have yet been identified. But having said that, we think we should rewrite the mandatory element section of the performance page to say mandatory elements, the minimum cardinality of greater than 0. When an element is mandatory, the data is expected to always be present. The convention in this guide is to mark all mandatory elements as must support. So it basically took off the reference to AU core guidance and saying this is how you do it. This is what AU core. So essentially here we're being silent on guidance that we need to work out, come back to this and work that out later.
Sounds persuasive to me.
Is it?
You've changed it. I mean, the only thing that I don't see, like, if it was persuasive with mod, the only thing is that there's no reference to not specifying.
Yeah.
Missing data extensions, but
yeah, I mean, it's fun. Like, I mean, I think the persuasive part is saying we don't want to say how AU core is doing it now. We're not saying that, yes, you can use missing and suppressed data and this is how you do it. What we're actually kind of saying is, well, we don't know yet. So we don't want to give you guidance that's going to tell you to do it this way. But you're right. We're kind of saying it's persuasive that maybe there will be circumstances where, well, we haven't said, we haven't explicitly prohibited the use of missing data extension, right?
Look, I'm not gonna get hung up on it. I personally think it's persuasive.
Well, I mean, I'm actually, it's a fine line, right? It could go either side.
I'm happy with the changed content. So as long as that's the outcome, I don't care whether it's not persuasive with mod or persuasive with mod. Although I don't think it's even persuasive with mod. It's just persuasive because my recommendation basically says to rewrite the missing data section to say that there is no missing data. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we're not saying
that's
that.
the variation. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the not persuasive part. I mean, potentially they're not supposed. We're not adding that. It's
Okay.
That they're not allowed. We're not saying that. We're just being a bit silent.
Yeah. I'm happy with it.
Yeah. Well, does anyone else have any comments on that? And before we go to a motion? No. Well, I'll make that motion as described in the resolution description there. Heath, do you want to second it?
Yeah, okay.
You sound like I twisted your arm. You don't have to. Don't agree with it?
I was just letting someone else to do it.
All right, we'll go to a vote. Should see a vote up on your screen now. All right, and we'll close that one off in the 3, 2, 1. That one is approved. 17 votes affirmative, 12 votes abstained.
Next one
Can I just make a comment? I think once we get past ballot, we'll probably need to come back to our obligations around those. Just make sure that they make sense in the context of this.
Yeah. So 47097. Next one. 47097. So this one talks about service request status, and the service request status value set includes draft, active, on hold, revoked, completed, entered in error, and unknown. And if the resource profile AU imaging request is designed to support exchange of test requests, order between placement and filler is unclear that any request will be sent with a status of draft or unknown. It's extremely unlikely that any filler will act on a request with a status of draft or unknown. So that's, I will show you here. That's how you call. This is requesting. So under service request, we have, I'll show you the snapshot table. We have status, and it's mandatory, support, and it references this binding of request status, which has that draft, entered in error, and unknown in it. Now, we did a similar thing for task when we went through task. I believe it's in here now, where we had task status, and here, and we have removed some of those others so that we only have requested, received, accepted, rejected. So we removed the unknown and draft from that as well. So this kind of follows that. And the distinction between the task status and the service request status is the service request status is the place's status of the request, and the task status is the filler's status of fulfilling that request. So they are different status used for different things, but it still makes sense that a placer there's having a service request with the status of draft or unknown doesn't make sense in our exchange model because I feel I can't do anything with it. So the proposed resolution on this is saying it's persuasive with modification, and that we remove the draft and unknown status from the available values for service request status in AU eRequesting service request profile. This is with modification because this request was around imaging request, but this is proposing we make the change on the service request profile, which is our abstract profile. And then the eRequesting imaging request and pathology request profiles will inherit that change because we make it to the abstract profile and the others will inherit that change. Does anyone have any comments or thoughts on that? I think it makes enough sense, and so I'll motion that we accept that resolution.
I'll second.
Herself during her sleep.
This morning I wake up, I can see there's 4 recordings under sleep talking.
All right, I think Kathleen, you might need to be on mute.
All right.
I am on mute.
Is that someone else?
All right, so we're going to run a vote for that as soon as I can get this one to stop. Okay, so there should be a vote up on your screen. Remove the draft and unknown status from available values for service request status in AU requesting service request profile. Okay, and we'll close that one off in 3, 2, 1. That one is passed. We have 18 affirmative, 1 negative, and 9 abstained.
Is there the negative? Does whoever did that, do they want to express their concern? No, it's okay.
Nope. We can move on.
Consider adding status reason 47098. That's the next one. So this is related to that service request status that we've just talked about there. So the description here is service request status value set includes draft active, on hold, revoked, completed. We've just removed draft and unknown, so that's not in that value set, but the others are there. Then it says if a revised request is sent to update on a previous request with a new status equals on hold, revoked, or entered in error, it will be important to have a status reason element to provide information on the status change, e.g. wrong patient included in the previous request. So this would be from a placer's point of view, the placer has created the service request and then changes the status of that service request after it has been created, being able to have somewhere to put the reason for that change in there. So looking at the resolution description here, so service request doesn't actually have a status reason in it at the moment. So this would be proposed using the request status reason extension, add a status reason element on the AU eRequesting service request profile with a must support flag and a cardinality of 0 at 1. So, and status reason will enable additional information to be provided when a placer changes the status of a diagnostic request, for example, states like on hold, revoked, or entered in error. And the obligations for that would be that the placer populates it if known, and the filler and the server handle it. The server is able to populate it, and the patient access no error. The AU eRequesting imaging request and pathology request profiles will inherit the status reason element, including must support flag and obligations. So that's the proposal there. Any comments on that?
What does it mean for the filler to handle it?
The same as all the other obligations. You can still ignore it, but you need to know it's there and know what you're doing with it, right? So,
why is it no error then? Why isn't it no error?
Well, I think
because you can't ignore it.
You can't ignore it. Yeah, maybe you have to display it, but it's up to you to know how you'd meaningfully process it.
Yeah, I have no idea. They could write anything. They could say, "Do not do this request at any cost." Like how do
Yeah, but it doesn't mean the system being able to show it to an operator or something with the service request. Because the real obligation is on the status. Like if it's entered in error, what do you do with it? Do you ignore it, whatever else? This is informative text to say, if you want to know why it changed, this will tell you why.
It ends up into my horrible clinical notes bucket, and it's not clinical notes, but we don't have. I guess I put forward that we don't do this today. Like there's no status reason on an e-order that we consume. We don't handle them. There is no such thing. You know, we get orders. You know, there's no metadata that says, "Oh, and I'm giving it to you because of for some status reason." They give us clinical notes. I'm concerned that I don't know how I'm going to handle it at all.
So, other than the fact that
to me, it's kind of like it's qualifying why something's in a status, but at my side, it's fairly mechanical that if it's entered in error, I'm not going to do it anymore. If it's on hold, it's on hold. It's it's like the meta reason why is a bit. I don't know what it achieves on the filler side.
I mean, we haven't dealt with cancel at the moment, so but and I know we've talked about it in the past, Angus, but you know,
It feels like a note for the placer. It's a bit like reminding themselves, oh, why did I do that? I did that for this reason.
I think if there was a cancellation, wouldn't you want to know why? The entered in error is also an interesting scenario as well. Like if it has gone into the wrong patient's record for some reason, you've ordered it, wouldn't you want to know that? Otherwise,
You might want to know that, but this wouldn't necessarily tell you that.
Well, it will tell you that because that's exactly what this is about. This is the status reason. So if it was entered in error, I know one system that if it's basically cancelled or deleted, kind of removed because it's no longer correct, because when they require a reason to be in the front end, so it will be captured, and this is the logical place to put it.
But to me, again, that's all places concerned. Like once we've, let's say it was entered in error, it was on the wrong patient. Initially for us, that's just an order, right, sitting in a bucket. And if you cancel it before we start it because it was the wrong patient or entered in error, great, we won't collect against it, right? But if we begin it and it was on the wrong patient, you can't cancel it now, right? Because we've started. You're probably gonna have to ring us up and go, you know, so
I understand that, but you're getting into workflow now. If we're sticking at the data level, you know, that there is, if I cancelled it, wouldn't you want to know why? All right. In the scenario around, you know, you can handle it because it hasn't been collected yet, but also keeping in mind that this is potentially an undirected one that's just going up into the repository. All right. So no one has actually even claimed it yet. So from an auditing perspective, in this new brave world we would want to know, okay, it was revoked and this is why. It was entered in error, this is why.
I'm only pushing from the filler's point of view. I still can't see any reason why I need to know why. Like,
but even from the filler's point of view, wouldn't you, let's say you had your order, you've started filling it, you then receive this update to say it's been done in error, wouldn't your system then populate the completed result and send that back with that same status? Because that way it could be at least received and noted in the receiving system that you have, the status has been changed as well. So
we haven't, there's kind of this point in time where we begin and you can't cancel, right? So if we
no, but we could still update a value, and then when you send that back, we at least know that that value is to be filtered out, or at that point.
That's a different
thing. That is a
workflow
thing, but
that's fulfillment, not the service request.
I think also the whole point of Angus's argument there was that he was talking about the fulfiller doesn't need to worry about that, but there is perhaps that they need to mirror the system even though they've started doing the request.
There's no point in, there's no concept of mirroring the system. The service request is read only from his perspective. Like, he just needs to get the details of the order. What happens, whether that service request was withdrawn, then for him, for the filler's perspective, it would need to have a reciprocal withdrawal of fulfillment. And the problem, obviously, the problem here is also coexistence of paper and the digital. And it's obviously, as Heath kind of referred to, I don't think we can actually get too bogged down in the exactness of this, because once paper comes into play, you know, it's irrelevant whether digitally this thing was withdrawn. If someone rocks up to the collection center with a piece of paper, you're going to do it anyway. And you're not going to refuse the collection based around a digital only view until the foundations of the policy and regulations around this have a, you know, a change equivalent to maybe the prescribing world. But I think from my perspective, I kind of agree with Heath that it seems a good idea if you're looking at this with a digital lens, then providing that information would be appropriate, but you know, I guess it's going to be, are we actually saying, like, what happens if you don't, should you be able to not populate this? Because there is no there is no single reason why it was just withdrawn, and there's no further information.
Yeah,
It's
for me
0 to
that
1. So
yeah, and it's just basically saying if one's provided, you've got to be able to handle it, right? So and I think if I go and look at obligations, ignore is one of those possibilities around handling. It is a subtype of handle. I think I'd have to double check that. But you all are also have the right to reject the request because the status is not one of those things that you're able to support, Angus. So you're saying I've just received something with revoked and you don't support it. You can reject that
But
as
we're not,
part of you handling the status, right? So does that make sense?
yeah, I understand. I can reject this. I don't know how that applies. I mean, this isn't about status; it's about status reason. But I understand.
Well, they
But
go hand in hand.
The difference with status, it's not a fair comparison because status is a known set, right? So I can make a clear decision about what I will do for each status, but I can't make a clear handle decision about a piece of text that someone wrote. Like I don't know what
handle
right?
is just you process it. You can log it, you can throw it away. You just need to know it's there and need to know that. But you're not going to make a
there's no
decision
error.
based on
It's
different
like,
text.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and the other thing from a
just
and sorry, from a context of the like a source system, if I was the requesting system producing the service request and I've changed the status to on hold or revoked in my system, I then have a placeholder for those in this. Whether or not you handle it is inconsequential. My system will still send out the updated service request, but from a completeness point of view, something else querying my system, my display system or something else picking that up will be able to display what the status is of that service request based off that there.
I've
So
got
in
no
context
issue
of
with.
that,
I've got no. I'm not debating what the placer does with this. Like, I'm not a placer, right? I'm a filler, and I struggle with, like, if you say a handle, I have to now present it to my lab staff.
you don't have to. But
your application could choose to ignore that.
So if I ignore it as a technician who creates the interface, I'll just dump that. The scientists, the labs don't need to know about that. Have I faithfully handled it? Just at an IT level, I can't be bothered with this information.
How do you currently handle it in an HL7 world? Would be my same
question. There is no status reason. That's kind of my point. Is we do not handle it today because there is no such thing.
As an application developer, if I received arbitrary data from a third-party system of this kind, I would discard it because it can't be reliably presented back to the end user in any
and is that
in any sensible way.
But that might be clinically unsafe.
Well, it might be.
Exactly.
That's the problem with the definition of this element.
Yeah. Right? If
the element was a fixed set, like if it was a codable concept, it'd actually be a lot easier, even though we'd have to work out what that was.
Yeah.
Well, codable concepts aren't fixed sets, though.
No, but they're at least not random text.
They can be random text. You don't have to have a concept. You don't have to have a code in a codable concept.
Okay, well, let me step back from a codable concept and say if it were a list of potential reasons why, you know, if people knew what they're actually selecting from here instead of being able to enter potentially garbage, then it's useful. Yeah.
But that's a different thing.
Well, it is, but as it's defined right now, it doesn't do any of those things. That's what.
But that's all I'm making the decision on is what's defined now.
What
I think we're getting too bound up in the details, and we need more implementation experience. Do in general the implementers of this from both a filler and a placer have meaningful need to use this? And if they do, what constraints are they placing over it? And should we then adopt those constraints because that seems to be commonly accepted use? Like we've done, I guess, prior to this, I think it's important not to over-constrain things until we know that there is common use and that the common use is rightly we're getting into this kind of realm of anticipating what we expect good system use should be, and that I think in general is a difficult thing. I think in general saying, yep, having a reason is probably something reasonable to do, but we won't put any, we'll put the minimum constraints around it until we find that implementation experience.
So what if we change it to no error? Does that satisfy your requirement, Angus?
It does for filler. If filler was no error, I'd be happy, right?
Believe that all the others would just change filler.
Yeah, and
no error for now.
I'd be happy with that change as well, given I have had some implementation experience with Fire directly from a Placer point of view. Yeah, definitely, it definitely has a place in Placer, and I can see Angus's point in a filler not necessarily needing that. So yeah, no error would satisfy my my criteria for a filler side of that.
I mean, I think if we were able to constrain down to the statuses that actually required it or something like that, then we could probably go stronger. But based on what Andy was sort of saying as well, let's not overly constrain things at this time until we got experience.
Yeah, speaking from both sides, as Epic will probably be a placer and a filler at some point. Like it doesn't, if it's not attached to specific statuses, the text doesn't mean anything. If we're technically allowing a string to come by through this reason, even if it's just a submitted status, then we shouldn't be handling that necessarily the same way as if it's a revoked status. The reason for a revoked status. So as long as they're like not technically enforced, I'd be more comfortable with a no error kind of situation for the filler.
How you can handle it. They could completely contradict the status with a status reason.
Exactly.
And how do I handle that? Like there's no way I can handle that. So
how does this differ though from the task status reason? It's exactly the same argument.
No, because the task status reason is metadata about the workflow, not clinical data.
But it's still
this
what
is
if
the
that
doctor telling you something about this request, right?
Yeah, there's a whole different set of obligations here. We're talking about something that is specific for a filler and the fulfillment itself. So changing status is absolutely informing how and why has a lot more relevance to the filler. Whereas for the service request status, it's about the status relative to the placer. So that status may be quite happily ignored at some point by the filler, because they're really concerned at the moment about the fulfillment need.
Correct. Yeah, I tend to agree with Andy and Angus on this one. This specific request around service request status generally applies to the placer, not the filler, at least in current implementation context. And until we have a wider scope around that, and we can revisit this again, I think a no error on the filler would suffice without overly restricting everything down.
Let's just confirm. So the handle should handle the meaning element correctly. Does not specify particular handling.
That
because
next
if an
sentence
upgrade
is
that
key.
ignores it is not going. Yeah, so that's the bit we're
that's
talking
the
about.
key.
But
you can't ignore
it. Yeah.
All right, and ignore is not a type of this. It is actually a sibling of this. So yeah, it cannot ignore it. That's the key.
Yeah. And you know, if a doctor's going to write something about a status, what does he think I'm going to do? Like I assume it's fine if it's a note for himself to remind him why he cancelled that request, but he can't be directing instructions to me through text that I'm going to handle, or
I think there's more nuances here. It is very status specific, and we don't have the mechanisms or understanding at this stage to be able to put those nuances into the profile.
So to summarize, then, are we happy with this if we change this on the filler to no error? Is that the only change we're worried about?
That
So if we change that to no error, just update that. So we'll use the status reason extension, must support cardinality of 0 to 1, and it'll be populated if known on the placer, no error on the filler. The server has to handle it because it's the intermediary, so, and he has to be able to populate it, and then the patient access is no error. Okay. Well, to summarize that, then I'll motion that we accept this resolution.
I'll second it.
Okay, so we're going to put that one up on the screen now if you'd like to vote for that. Affirmative, negative, or abstain. Thank you. And if you'd like to provide a status update as to why you're voting, feel free to do that in the chat. All right, we're going to close this one off. 3, 2, 1. Okay, that one is passed. 17-4, 1 negative, 9 abstained. Did the person who voted negative want to comment on that at all or provide any feedback? You don't have to. Nope. Okay. Thanks very much.
Okay. I think we've got one last one scheduled for today, which may be a big one. We'll see. Heath. Just get my right window. Okay. So
we have 10 minutes remaining.
Yep. Well, we'll see how far we get for this one. So this one was recommend the addition of an eRequesting responder actor and associated capability statement to allow a placer system provide access to service requests they have initiated without creating them on another server. Recommended the eRequesting responder capability statement has server interactions for service request search and read. Heath, do you want to give some context around this, about the scenario you see this playing out?
Let me get my bearings.
So place a system essentially not having to create the service request on another server, that it makes them available from its system through read and search interactions. So actually what might help is if I go to our, let's say core, jump back to eRequesting. We have the eRequesting, I'll get there eventually. Okay, we have these actors and general interactions with, we have a placer that creates and updates on a server and the filler that reads, searches the server. So this is proposing that the placer doesn't have to create it on another server, can actually make service requests available to the filler directly without having to put them on another server.
You summarized it well.
So this is talking about having another actor, which is the eRequesting responder, which is essentially a placer system, right? And it would internally manage service requests. It doesn't have to create them somewhere else, and then exposes them via read and search. So the filler and also the patient access actor can do it. So essentially it's a combination of these two actors, except it doesn't support create and update because they're internal. The management of those service requests are internal to that system.
So like taking the line away and making
the
center box almost like a duality placer as server.
Yep. So
yeah, you could draw a box around those two actors if you like.
Yeah. And then so that would be a new actor that would have its own capability statement. That's what was proposed there. I had a proposal that is different to that to satisfy the same outcome though. So what I've got here in the resolution description is that a placer or intermediary system may provide access to service requests without implementing an AU eRequesting conformant create interaction. Instead, the system can allow access to its available service requests through read and search interactions without creating them on another server or requiring the implementation of the AU eRequesting create interaction. So the alternative to my proposal here is that rather than a new actor, change the conformance requirement for service requests create and update interactions on the eRequesting server capability statement from shall to should. So on our existing server actor, we could say shall support read and search, should support create and update. So therefore, a placer system could implement the eRequesting server capability statement and not implement the create and update interactions because they're not going to support create and update from external systems, and they're going to expose all the service requests that they have available through the read and search.
So Michael, that's like really the server being able to opt in to allowing external submissions, basically.
That's right. Yeah. So through that, I mean, it could do it through access control anyway, and say, you know what, I've got to create a interaction there, but no one can use it because I'm not going to give anyone permission to use it. I have the interaction, but this actually takes a step back where you don't have to implement the interaction. Right. So,
yeah.
So you can create a server that no one can put anything in.
Yeah.
That's valid because the way things get in is it's just your own back end system how it gets in.
That's right. You've got
supporting a facade effectively. So
yeah,
there's a data you can, as a placer system, not a placer actor, a placer system, you are implementing the server actor over the top of your database.
I think for the moment, this rather than introducing the complexity of another actor and another actor we have to manage obligations for, I think we can satisfy the requirement with this.
Yep.
And I mean, the chances are we may need other actors in the future when we get into more complexities, but I think, like we've been saying, it's pretty early on, and we want to make sure that we don't constrain too much, and having another actor is only going to make things more complicated. But this gives us the ability to work within the sort of use case that Heath, you've raised.
I'm assuming you are motioning this, Michael.
Yeah.
I'll happy to second it.
Well, we've got a few minutes. I'll motion that we accept this resolution.
I'll second it.
All right, very good. Okay, so we're going to go to a vote for that we just change the obligations slightly on the
so the eRequesting
statement.
server capability will change the shall on create and update to a should support create and update.
Yep. So you should see a vote on your screen right now. You can vote affirmative, negative, or abstain. And we'll close that one off in 3, 2, 1.
It's the same problem on the other end, isn't it? Like, it doesn't affect that vote. That vote's fine. But
yeah,
you could argue the same thing about the filler, couldn't you? Same problem, other side of the actor diagram.
Yep. Well, it does also give. We're not explicit here about placer, so this is a server capability statement. So a placer or filler or anyone else can also implement this actor, right? You can implement two actors.
So as a filler, you could still be a server, Angus.
Yeah.
So as a filler system, I'm trying to make, you can be the server actor because you still have the obligation of supporting read and search to support patient access.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
It means that any of the actors can also implement the server actor with that.
And to support other fillers.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, that's good. I was just thinking it in
Great.
reverse, how it affects it.
Yeah, it's actually, from my perspective, it's a nice proposal. It's
Mm.
actually gives us the flexibility that I think we all talked about at the beginning when we were trying to talk about this. So I like it.
Right, and that one has passed. 15 affirmative, 12 abstained.
All right,
We
in the
have
last
2 minutes.
2 minutes, yep. So we've got block vote 5 that'll be coming out later this afternoon. Hopefully, given we're nearly through reconciliation, this will be our last block vote. These are items that we've identified that are considered for future use. So the things that we're saying, look, they're probably important. We're going to look at them for the future. And that may even be part of our scoping to work out when in the future that we would look at these. So this will come out today. It'll close next Friday, and then the results will be in the TDG meeting in Melbourne. And so for our calendar here, that next TDG is the in-person day in Melbourne. So I'll send out a cancellation for our Zoom meeting because there will be no Zoom meeting on that day. It's an in-person only. Like I put in the chat earlier, the agenda is available for that. Any of the items that are going through being presented on that day, if you've got anything you want to raise and you can't make it on the day, talk to a co-chair. We'll happily take those into consideration. We'll also report back then on the 5th of December about all the outcomes from that day. So again, if you haven't made it, we'll report back and there's opportunity to discuss on the 5th of December. Then connect-a-thons on the 12th of December, and our final TDG for the year will be on the 19th of December.
Great. And we're done. Thanks, everyone. So we'll see you down in Melbourne on the 21st, and if not, back here on the 5th. Thanks all.
Cheers.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.